As Hannah and Tim mentioned, I'll be presenting our youth engagement and from review to action. But first, to introduce the Intergens. So you've already had an introduction to myself. The other team members are mostly here. So Dr. Shalini Diani couldn't join us today, but is here very much in spirit. Dr. Grace Moira, Dr. Deepu Sivadas, and Mr. Isa Elagbedi and Douglas Williamson. So IUCN leads for this project, who are very much collaborators with the Intergens, Tim, Sean Southey, chair of CEC, and Camila Perez Gabileondo, program officer for CEC as well. So even though I am presenting today for the Intergens, this was definitely a massive group effort, and it's wonderful that so many of them are here today. So Tim already spoke to the need for this review, so I'll jump right into the research process. So our research really began with an in-depth literature review, looking at peer-reviewed literature as well as gray literature, taking a wide scope as to youth engagement to this point in time, as well as key points of interest and input that could help our review and help to scope the more empirically focused aspects of our review, which engaged stakeholders from a variety of different organizations, any kind of key informant that would have important information to share with us about youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships. And then we used the Collaborative Leadership Institute Compass survey to more broadly engage people. So this had quite a wide reach and engaged approximately 1,000 participants. Once our review was completed, we shared it with our IUCN partners, who sent it to a number of reviewers for feedback. And we incorporated this feedback into the final report, which you can now find on the Whova platform. And so Tim already mentioned, we're really looking forward to the feedback that we get from this workshop today. We see it as a really critical part of the implementation of this report. So I'm going to present some key findings from the three major components of our review, and then situate them within the recommendations. So major findings from the literature review component came out that investing in engagement of youth professionals promises multiple benefits to global conservation in the 21st century. We must make considerations of the centrality and power dynamics between being old and being young, and the interplay with efforts to achieve intergenerational equity. There was also limited institutionalization of youth engagement in governance structures. So something important to keep in mind when thinking about the structural issues of youth mainstreaming. There was also quite a bit of information on how alienation of young people from their communities and institutions and tokenistic engagement can curtail youth voices. So meaningful and deep engagement is important. Engagement of young professionals must also consider youth in all of their diversity. And I'll talk about this a little bit more in the recommendations. So lessons learned relating to IUCN coming out of the literature review. So Iucn Commissions are commended for supporting young professional networks. They provide opportunities to build leadership skills of young professionals, enable intergenerational collaborations, facilitate the involvement of young professional networks in the design and delivery of major IUCN events. They also provide for funding and awards to young professionals and inspire career pathways in conservation. And in turn, youth can increase commission membership and expertise. Also, the Intergenerational Partnership for Sustainability has a task force, and this task force was put together following resolution 4.098. And the IPS has really attempted to bridge the gap, the intergenerational gap within IUCN, but to this point has not received commensurate institutional support to really be able to push it further. There are a few comparable conservation organizations engaging youth professionals in conservation at a global level, and definitely lessons learned to be gleaned from such organizations. The review also was able to identify models of youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships. So you can see these in the report. For the sake of time, I won't mention all of them. But a couple of examples include youth awards, so really highlighting the achievements of youth and then putting resources towards their further participation and the things that they're contributing, and connecting young people with a global cause. So the key stakeholder consultations took place on Zoom, as almost everything does these days. But we were able to have some really meaningful dialogues and engage key people in asking, questions around intergenerational partnerships and youth mainstreaming. So 35 key stakeholders were engaged through one-on-one interviews and these types of focus groups. Some of the emergent themes, or these are the top emergent themes that came out of the stakeholder consultations, are how youth is understood across IUCN, and recognizing that youth is understood in different ways, but some of these are common ways. How intergenerational partnerships are understood across IUCN, experiences and learning within IUCN, assessing youth engagement and doing a SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, looking at organizational mechanisms, support structures, and models for mainstreaming youth and building intergenerational partnerships within IUCN, looking at the role of IUCN regional offices. This actually was quite an interesting area, that regions were quite strong with especially youth engagement. The special focus on Indigenous peoples and local communities, looking at gender and the components that need to be acknowledged within youth engagement, and the role of IUCN in the global youth movement. As I mentioned, we did a SWOT analysis, which can be found in the report. I won't spend time on each point here as well, because of trying to keep the presentation relatively short. But one of the interesting things that came out of this was that there are a lot of key opportunities which can point the direction for IUCN youth mainstreaming and intergenerational partnerships in the future, that there's a really good foundation to build upon. So this is the Collective Leadership Compass survey tool. This shows the major areas in which the analysis was conducted. So you can see there's wholeness, future possibilities, engagement, innovation, humanity, and collective intelligence. And within that, there are a number of sub-themes. And so the tool really helps us understand, kind of as a spider graph, where the strengths are and where there are areas that are in need of improvement. So the overall findings. So perceived strengths lie in the innovation and wholeness dimensions of the graph that I just showed, which is a pattern that's typical of collaboration systems that are mission-driven, focused, and connected to the bigger picture, and are practiced in finding solutions to emerging challenges. So this is a strong alignment to the type of work that we're looking at in terms of youth engagement into the future. There were also perceived weaknesses, and these related to future possibilities, engagement, and collective intelligence, especially in integrating formalized and structural measures to address youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships. So this was where people were taking a bit more of a critical lens in terms of what structures were perhaps barriers to youth engagement in the long term. Overall, respondents across IUCN were found to be very passionate about the work that they do, but that they sometimes have challenges in shifting to collective action at the collaboration systems level. And so this was one of the major insights brought about by putting the CLI analysis into place in our review. So now getting into recommendations. So the recommendations were organized into 3 main categories. So the first main category is a recommendation to implement an IUCN mandate/policy statement on youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships. And this had a number of subcategories, which I'll get into further. The second major theme or category for recommendations was recommendations for IUCN systems strengthening in support of youth mainstreaming and intergenerational collaboration, and then recommendations for communication in support of youth mainstreaming and intergenerational collaboration. So these high-level recommendation categories are broken into sub-recommendations within the report with some detailed descriptions there as well, if you'd like to read more on where the recommendations came from and how they connect to the rest of the report. We also identified recommendations as being either short or long-term as a way of helping IUCN prioritize their focus in what is a realistic strategy moving forward. So I'll begin with the short-term recommendations. So the first is the establishment of a permanent office or unit on youth with a director of youth and intergenerational partnerships. We saw this as a really important first short-term objective for making sure that there is a responsibility held within IUCN, that there is actually a go-to person in terms of youth engagement and continuing to move this forward so that it doesn't get lost within the larger system that is IUCN. The second short-term recommendation is encourage collaborations that ensure that youth leaders from Indigenous and equity-seeking communities, especially communities in the Global South, are included in IUCN conservation efforts. So this relates very much to our recognition of diversity and also the work that's happening at the regional level. The third short-term recommendation is establish an IUCN Young Champions Award for youth in conservation and enhance skill development through an internship program. So this is capacity recognition and capacity development together in one package. The fourth short-term recommendation is to develop and deliver effective communications that facilitate a clear understanding within the larger IUCN community about the importance of empowering younger generations and intergenerational collaboration. So of course, we have a Communications Commission, CEC, and we see them playing a leading role in the implementation of this short-term recommendation. So we have a number of longer-term recommendations as well, because we really think of this as a long-term strategy, something that isn't, just for the next couple of years, but something that IUCN will carry forward within its mandate. So the first longer-term recommendation is to establish a youth endowment fund in partnership with relevant stakeholders to provide sustained financial backing for the implementation of youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships mandate and strategy. With this youth endowment fund, we recommend that there be an establishment of a permanent unit for youth at the Secretariat, and that there is enhanced financial support for youth participation within IUCN congresses and commission meetings from different regions. This Youth Endowment Fund is also based on the recognition of financial challenges within large ENGOs in terms of, where does the budget go? And so we thought of this as a constructive recommendation that recognizes that. The second long-term recommendation is to foster a culture for meaningful youth engagement through transparent, regular, and widely communicated youth mainstreaming and intergenerational partnerships within IUCN. So this really contributes to moving away from tokenism and embedding a deeper structure and recognition of what youth can contribute. The third long-term recommendation is to establish a structured scheme for mentorship and intergenerational dialogue opportunities within the IUCN Secretariat, Council, Commissions, and membership, and to ensure that at least 1/3 of positions within IUCN are dedicated to youth. Moving on to our fourth long-term recommendation, enhance efforts in intergenerational collaboration in key IUCN programs through joint research and setting of standards for youth mainstreaming. We saw possibilities for youth collaboration in research with academic institutions and other NGOs, and that this could also connect to the setting of standards. The fifth longer term recommendation is develop educational programs and training opportunities that are targeted towards specific age groups. This perhaps relates to the Youth Academy, but we also see this as something that is broader and engaging with the diversity of youth. The sixth longer term recommendation is develop youth engagement models that cater for the heterogeneity of young people, including school-age children, youth, people from the BIPOC community, and other groups of young people that perhaps are not recognized or marginalized in these types of systems. And then the seventh longer term recommendation is to develop a communication portal to facilitate streamlined sharing of information relating to IUCN structure, activities, and opportunities for youth. One thing that we found through our review relating to this point is that often people who are new to the IUCN system find it a very difficult system to navigate, and the portal could help to overcome such a barrier. Okay, so those are our key recommendations. As I mentioned, you can read in detail in our report. All of the information is there. We really look forward to your engagement in this report and the feedback that will come from IUCN and from youth globally. We'd like to thank you for being here today, for caring about youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships. And a special thanks to all who participated in our study and to the reviewers for providing really important feedback. So I'll pass it back to Hannah now.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for that comprehensive overview of the report. And just to re-emphasize what Melanie said, the report is available on Whova on the session page, as well as on the website. So we'll drop the links as well in the chat for any of you who missed the links to the report. Thank you very much, Melanie, for that comprehensive review, and to the full Intergens team really for being here with us to share in this reflections and workshop moment. So at this point, I would like to now introduce some comments from colleagues within the IUCN family. And first here, I would like to introduce to all of you Ambassador Masahiko Horie, who is a member of the IUCN Council representing South and East Asia, and he has a particular focus in his work on council in advocating for the recognition of youth at IUCN. So we are very pleased and honored to have you with us today, Ambassador Horie. Thank you for being up at such a late hour in the night for joining this session. We really appreciate it, and over to you for some remarks.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Melanie, for your nice introduction of the review. First of all, I would like to thank Intergens for this excellent and very exciting review, which is a product of extensive researches on youth engagement at IUCN. The recommendations are based on an analysis very much in depth and IUCN now needs to build on, with an emphasis on the need to give youth a visible leadership role in the heart of the Union, composed of the secretariats, commissions, members, and national committees. IUCN should be responsive not only to those tabled in the review, but also to other demands and requests by youth expressed at this Youth Summit and at a series of IUCN congresses in the past, but not yet fully implemented. As you pointed out, we need to challenge the tokenism still witnessed in many places. Youth should not be treated at a fringe or at a margin of IUCN. Youth and intergenerational dialogues need to become a day-to-day reality and 365 days a year commitment of IUCN. In one word, mainstreaming youth is needed at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And one important point is that this youth mainstreaming process should take place through a very well coordinated efforts by the secretariats, committees, regional offices in the world, with a wholehearted support by all the IUCN members and national committees. And for this to be realized, the commanding tower at the headquarters is indispensable for a good and effective coordination and also an effective mobilization of regional offices geared for the needs of youth is crucially important, and these regional offices' additional outreaching efforts towards youth is critically important. At the opening session of this Global Youth Summit, I was very much impressed by the United Nations Envoy on Youth, Ms. Jasma Wickramanayake, appointed by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who launched United Nations Youth Strategy named Youth 2030. As such, we need a good and innovative leadership with an excellent perspicacity for the future of this planet. IUCN should be the champion spearheading to work for and work with youth in the domain of nature conservation. I sincerely hope this Global Youth Summit will not turn out to be another simple quadri-annual youth pep-up event, but instead, IUCN should create a new sustainable platform based on Intergens review and the results of this youth summit for the furtherance of mainstreaming youth in our conservation efforts. Of course, everything is a matter of priority, but the investment in youth must be most rewarding for the future of this planet. And it is also a must from the viewpoint of intergenerational equity. Now, let me ask you a question. My question is to you and to Intergens. What Intergens and you really see as the distinctive role of IUCN in supporting youth and youth-led organizations? I mean, the distinctive role that is different from other organizations such as CBD, UNEP, or UN headquarters or other agencies. Today, I wish you a very good discussions, and I expect good and stimulating nudges and kicks given to IUCN for the furtherance of nature conservation on this planet. Without the meaningful involvement and engagement of youth, our future cannot be secured. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chowri, for those very important remarks. And I think so much of that resonates with all of us young people, and I'm very sure everyone here on this call today. And so thank you so much for sharing. And we hope that the outcomes of this report, as well as the recommendations that we get and reflections we get from the group compiled together, do indeed reflect these important next steps that you have just mentioned we should be taking on this. So thank you very much for that. Before we move to breakouts, which is where we really want to have you participate and share your opinions on this review, I would like to just pass over to my colleague who's going to share her screen, and we'll hear one recorded message from one of our colleagues, Aissa Traore. And Aissa is a program officer at IUCN here at headquarters, and she was kind enough to also share her thoughts on the report, having reviewed it and speaking from a young professional perspective as well. So thank you very much for your attention to Aissa's comments and reflections on the report as well.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, all over the world. My name is Aissa Chowri. I am a young professional in IUCN, and this is my contribution to this conversation. I have read the review, and congratulations to the review team. Now, IUCN is establishing a global youth engagement strategy to make sure that young people are able to take up a more prominent leadership role in shaping the global agenda on youth, on nature conservation. This new direction.
Sorry, Sophia, could you start again, because we're seeing your screen?
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, all over the world. My name is Aissa Traore. I am a young professional in IUCN, and this is my contribution to this conversation. I have read the review, and congratulations to the review team. Now, IUCN is establishing a global youth engagement strategy to make sure that young people are able to take up a more prominent leadership role in shaping the global agenda on youth, on nature conservation. This new direction is an opportunity for young leaders to take an active role on the international stage, shaping the way how IUCN works with young people around the world as a global organization, working in partnership with IUCN Secretariat. Or I have read in the review that there is a proposed new youth unit in the recommendation. That would be really great. Being a member of a Global Youth Leadership Council before, I see this as an opportunity to influence first the global conversation about youth. The review findings should shape how IUCN defines its own roles and function, as well as how it will continue to set a standard for shaping the youth engagement. As said, I was part of a global leadership council as founding member within Search for Common Ground global program in the HQ, established in December 2018 to guide Search for Common Ground effort to improve international policy and practice for youth participation. And I worked a lot with the Children and Youth Division. The council also provided advice on local and regional youth-focused programming within Search for Common Ground. And coming to IUCN, I hope the review authors will collaborate with the IUCN Secretariat and if agreed, the newly established youth unit to put leadership into action by first developing innovative ways to support young people within IUCN, including through capacity building and new funding models. Second, facilitating collaboration among youth groups and between young people and the international community on nature and conservation. Third and last, leading an international advocacy agenda to bring down the barrier to young people's engagement. I think there is a need to continue the work and have a dedicated person within the Secretariat who should work with the youth constituency to develop the form the engagement should take going forward. Some people might consider this as a long process, but it's important to clearly define what we want and how we should proceed. I would like to add to that when reading the review, I found that there is a lot of mentions of what IUCN could do for youth engagement, but no clear vision on what young people could also bring to IUCN. Now, my last comment is the review also address a decentralization approach, which is very good and take really advantage of our diversity. So now my question to you is, what do you think IUCN regions should do to respond to this review on a program level? Thank you for watching, and this is my contribution.
Thank you all for listening in, and that was Aissa Chowri, one of our colleagues and young professionals, with her reflections on the report and next steps from her perspective for IUCN to take. So with that, what I'm going to do is let you know about our next step in the process in this workshop, and what we're hoping to do is have some really meaningful discussions with you in various breakout groups. So our colleague Safia is going to be breaking us up into 3 breakout groups. You will be randomly assigned, and each group you will have a facilitator in that group. So Tim Badman will be facilitating one group, I will be facilitating another, and my colleague Roxana will be facilitating the 3rd group. And in each of these groups, we'll have 1 or 2 members of the Intergens team joining in the breakout session as well. And what we're hoping to go through in this breakout session with you all is to hear your comments and reflections on the report, to get a sense of which of these recommendations you agree with, which are the most important priorities for you from these recommendations, and are there any messages that you want to give IUCN regarding to how it actually responds to this review, and if there's anything missing that you think should be as part of these recommendations. So we will have a 30-minute session for these breakout sessions, after which we will come back together in plenary and get some feedback from each of the breakout groups, and then have a discussion together with the Intergens group and hear your comments and further questions. So with that, I will hand over to Safia, who will be splitting us up and has already begun to do so into different breakout groups. So just give us 2 minutes to get you all assigned to different breakout groups, and we look forward to seeing you there. I hope you all had very productive and enlightening breakout discussions. We certainly did in our session. And at this point, what I'd like to do is invite each of the 3 rapporteurs who were taking some notes during our last breakouts to give some feedback and reflections of the discussions that we just had in our breakouts to the plenary. So first, I'd like to call on Clemens, who is facilitating the breakout room 1.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, first of all, it's impossible to do justice for all the thought-provoking contributions in the first breakout room. I think the key term for pretty much all contributions in that breakout group was the entry point. What is the entry point of youth into IUCN? One entry point that was frequently mentioned was via the commissions and their young network, but certainly that one not as the only entry point. Existing structures were mentioned, existing resolutions, council decisions, but follow-up is not necessarily well funded or not funded at all. It was also the direction of engagement, youth towards IUCN, IUCN towards youth. So that's sort of a conceptual backing for any development of activity. Certainly the IUCN Academy was mentioned as a possible future venue of youth, perhaps into IUCN, but also youth learning from IUCN, capacity building for youth and young professionals, and also an entry point into IUCN. Then another very important aspect that was mentioned was the factor of languages. That's determining in a way how easy or how difficult it is to get into IUCN and where and how that's possible. So capacity building was certainly a very important term as well. But not in the sense to learn a specific technical capacities such as of the different scientific disciplines, but also simply capacity building in how to understand this complex system of the union and then to understand what venues could be the right one for oneself as a young person into IUCN, as it's an incredibly complex organization. So something like guidelines would be needed, which are designed to young peoples and their need to understand how to best engage with IUCN for the given purpose. So then one last point I would definitely see as one of the key points mentioned during the discussions are intergenerational approaches. So not to only think about youth as a separate topic, but really try to bring together youth with other professionals, with retired professionals, to really foster an intergenerational exchange, and to do that, for instance, through mentorship. So I think, well, I certainly did not mention all of it, but try to summarize the discussion very briefly. Thanks.
That was an excellent summary, Clemens. We covered quite a lot of ground in ours, so that was great. Thank you. Next, I'll hand over to Nadine. And Nadine, maybe you can just say hello to everyone and also share what you do with IUCN before your report back.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Nadine Salim. I am a junior professional at the Global Protected Areas Program at IUCN in HQ. I've joined IUCN a little bit over a year and a half ago. And actually currently as well, I am involved in multiple youth initiatives, and I'm very happy to be with you, and I'm very happy to be a rapporteur or reporter for this session. So just to summarize back, it's not going to be a very different from what Clemens just said, which was very comprehensive. A lot of emphasis was actually also put on career development and career pathways for young professionals at IUCN, and just to be able to see how that progresses. Also on the fact of in the youth engagement at decision-making level. So for it to go just beyond having a seat at the table, but actually to be involved in how the decision is being made. The academy obviously was also mentioned heavily, and a lot of potential was felt for it, and a lot of excitement around it. especially for when it comes to better understand the union or even to get the capacity development for the skills that young professionals need to advance and acquire to progress, and also for as a place for them for intergenerational exchange and mentorship between colleagues and between different skilled and different experienced professionals as well. And a question was also raised around or the difficulty, the challenge, like one of the challenges that were identified is maybe the independence of funds for IUCN to do something for IUCN youth that is not necessarily related to a specific project or a specific department, and how that will work with the youth engagement and all of these initiatives going forward. So again, this is in the interest of time trying to summarize it and adding to the points of Clemens as well. So thank you, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nadine. And finally, Breakout Group 3, I'm going to hand over to Roxana to give us a brief summary of your discussions.
Thank you, Hannah. Hello, everyone. In our group discussion, I think that there are lots of keywords that were already mentioned by Nadine and Clemens from the other two breakout groups. And most importantly, the IUCN Academy. In the third group, it was mentioned again. So Valerie, there's a lot of interest in the IUCN Academy. This is something we really need to follow up and see what the opportunities are for young professionals and get it right in the complex picture of what IUCN is as the secretariat, commissions, membership, and see what the expectations of our different constituents are from the IUCN Academy. The other one was the mentorship, very much needed. We also discussed about the necessity to formalize the mentorship, at least at the level of the IUCN Secretariat. When a new person joins the IUCN Secretariat as a staff member, to have that opportunity to be mentored in the big and complex universe of what IUCN is. And the other big piece of our discussion was related to the Iucn Commissions, the opportunities for students to be part of Iucn Commissions, the guidelines that explain how young professionals can be involved in the commissions. And on that topic, we got some insights from Sean and Kirsten, who are part of this group. And if you are further interested in this, make sure you join some of the networking sessions with the IUCN Commission chairs that are organized as part of the Global Youth Summit. And yeah, the possibility of networking, I think it was mentioned by some of the comments, but in my opinion, I think this is really, really necessary. And obviously this links to one of the recommendations of the review in terms of communications and creating that platform to connect the young professionals. And maybe the very last point concerned let's say maybe the understanding of the different pieces of IUCN. We all talk about IUCN, but we need to be aware maybe the difference that there's the IUCN Secretariat, there's the membership, commissions, and other governing structures that make the union, and have a good understanding of how these different pieces contribute to what IUCN youth engagement is. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I see lots of resonance across the messages from the 3 breakout groups. So I think we're on the right track here. I'd just like to thank once again very much Clemens, Nadine, and Roxana, all of whom are also YPs at the Secretariat, and they've been working behind the scenes to help us with this session, but many others as well. So thank you all for your time and for joining as well. At this stage, I'd like to pass back to Melanie and the Intergens team for some quick reflections on what you've just heard from the breakouts. So over to you, Melanie, for some reflections.
Thank you, Hannah. I'll keep my reflection relatively short because I would like the other Intergens to have an opportunity to speak as well. It was great hearing the resonance with the report and also areas that perhaps were reflected in different parts of the report, but could be linked stronger to recommendations. I think that feedback is really valuable. And I really appreciate it because it's all about moving it from reporting to action at this stage. And so being able to do this collectively is a really important exercise. Yeah, nothing in particular about each individual point. They all really very valid points and very well received. So I just want to pass it on to any of the other Intergens to give their comments as well, because they were such a big part of this review process.
You'll have to pick on somebody, Melanie.
Yeah, I'll have to pick on somebody. People that I can see their faces, maybe Douglas.
Douglas has his hand up, yes.
I was actually gonna pick on Isa because I was making some comments towards the end of our breakout group, but Isa was about to jump in. So actually I'd like to invite Isa to jump in.
Go for it, Isa.
Yeah, thanks so much, Melanie. And I really appreciate the insight from the breakout groups. However, IUCN is going to work on some of those recommendations, and moving forward, I realized, for example, Dominic made mention of the aspect of mentoring, and I think there is need to look at a multidimensional way towards mentoring in a way that youths across the globe will be incorporated, especially into decision making. So on this note, I really appreciate everyone for their contributions and hope to have a very solid and a wonderful output at the end of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Isa. Melanie, anyone else on your radar who you'd like to pick on?
Yeah, I'm going to pick on Douglas because he was going to talk and then he was passing it to Isa.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks, Melanie, and thanks everybody else for all of your feedback and insights into this report. Yeah, I guess just to follow up and to reiterate the resonance that's across all the different groups. I think that just from my impression that there's a lot of great discussion points that are emerging from this, which I think was really the intention of our report as well, to really allow for these discussion points to emerge. One of the things that for me, and I think that a lot of the sort of more pointed and specific recommendations, which are coming from participants, that I feel is really well reflected from the review itself, is that this sort of need for a formalized and structured engagement from IUCN to tackle a lot of these issues, I think really will benefit from these more pointed recommendations. The review itself was a very, I think, certainly it had its points, but it was quite a broad review as well. And I think all of these points really serve to enhance our review. I think in our group, and I'm just going to point her out again because I think that, and it emerged in other groups as well, but the entry points and serving and sort of formalizing these structured entry points for engaging with youth, whether they be for, sort of multi-directional mentoring, youth mentoring senior members within IUCN and the other way around, as well as just general clarity on the ways that young people can be more involved in IUCN and IUCN's work. For me, these really resonate as well, and definitely from the report itself, I hope that those aspects really become strengthened through the sort of primary recommendation that we made in this review, which is how do we formalize the structures for in reinforcing this youth and intergenerational partnerships. That's all from my side. I would pass it along to maybe Deepu or Grace, who are also on the call. Grace, I see she's popped in. Go for it.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Douglas. Just a quick one to emphasize something that I forgot to emphasize during the breakout session. The regional offices were mentioned in the national committee. Perhaps we didn't spend a lot of time with people coming from national committees of IUCN. But one of the reasons why I think youth engagement and intergenerational partnerships is such a unique area for the IUCN to take lead on is because of our diversity and the various ways that we can engage. If you're not at the secretariat, you're with a commission or you're with a member, then within members, you have the national committees. And even within commissions, you have different working groups or different ways of working together. So there are all these ways to engage. But as we think of the regional offices, that means you're able to design programs. And this came out from our stakeholder consultations, that we're able to design programs that are context specific for the young people in those countries. And then that is escalating to the global level. Whereas there are also activities that can start at the global level and then going the other way down to the regional offices and to the country offices. So those are very important points to think about. There was a very good question about what is it that we are asking young people to do? And I think that's also something that is very important for us to think about. What is it that we want to ask young people to do? What is it that we are giving and taking? So team, as you're putting together the strategy, that's something that we need to come out very strongly, because there has to be a give and take in this particular situation. I think I will stop there. Otherwise I might talk too much. So yeah, back to you.
Maybe just a final thought after my colleagues speaking. I think it's a really important point to acknowledge that this is a point in time, right? And we are going to need to continuously evaluate and consider youth engagement within IUCN. And our review really reflects the research at this point in time. So I think, it's something that is going to take long-term engagement and commitment, on all levels.
Thank you very much. I think that's all from the Intergens for now. Melanie? Douglas? Grace?
So.
Deepu? Anyone else? No? Okay.
I don't know if Deepu wants to say anything.
Deepu messaged me and said he had to go to another session. He's very engaged in the Youth Summit. So I think that's why we haven't heard from him.
No problem. So thank you all very much for your feedback. And it's really great that so many of you were able to join us here today for this workshop. So thank you as well for that. Before we open up for a couple of questions from our participants today, I'd just like to introduce Valérie to all of you. Valérie Doutmeyer is recently joined IUCN as the project manager for the IUCN Academy. And so I'm going to hand over to Valérie because you all have mentioned the Academy. It's very exciting to see how it all evolves, and Valérie is here with us today. So I'd like her to share a few words with everyone on the call.
Thank you very much, Anna. Extremely exciting indeed. A lot of pressure on my shoulders at the same time. No, just maybe to say a few words about how I see the Academy. And I come from an executive education background, so mostly training young professionals, but also opening it up to all generations. And this is really where I see the Academy as a place for intergenerational dialogue. There was a very interesting comment made by Dominic in the chat, to which I fully agree, which is that there was a lot of talk about mentoring, in the sense that, envisaging that more senior people would help younger people navigate the organization and move forward in their career. Of course, that could be part of the youth engagement processes taking place at IUCN, but I really think that this is a two-way kind of relationship. I've had wonderful experiences of trainings, discussions, seminars where we put together very junior with very senior people, and all of them had their really something to bring to the discussion. And and it was appreciated as much by the more senior people than it was by the younger people. So for me, this is really what the academy should be aiming at, bringing together people from very different horizons, very different backgrounds, and be a place where you basically learn to communicate with each other. And you know, we all know that we are very much framed by the kind of studies we made. You know, historians have difficulties to talk to lawyers, and so these kind of programs are also a way to build a common language, to better understand what the others are aiming at, so that you're also more efficient than when you try and work on the ground. And I really see the academy as this kind of place where, of course, the youth has a very important role to play. But for me, it shouldn't be seen as a group that needs to be nurtured and you know, and carried forward, but as a group that also has something very positive to bring and should take part in the discussion on the at the same level as the other participants. So that will be my word. I leave it back. I give it to you, Anna.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Valérie. And for all of you who weren't able to join Valérie's session, she had a networking session as well to introduce the academy. Please note that there's also a survey for you to complete. It's a co-design survey. Valérie is very much looking for all of your insights and feedback in terms of how to co-design this IUCN Academy. So please do fill it out. I will drop the link to that in the chat as well.
Thank you very much for that, Anna. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So at this point, we do have a couple of minutes. If there are any general questions, anyone would like to raise their hand or just drop a question in the comment box. In the meantime, while you all are thinking about additional questions, I'm going to just put one out there to Tim. Perhaps Tim can give some response to this. One question we received was, how can IUCN ensure that these short-term and long-term recommendations are going to materialize in the future? Can we as youth and young professionals look forward positively to these recommendations?
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I mean, I guess the start of my answer to that question, and I think it's just really the crucial question, is why the review on its own isn't enough. You know, what's needed is the response to the review and the IUCN youth strategy that is gonna come forward. Because I think that's where what's needed is to demonstrate where IUCN can commit, you know, where there are things we can act on straight away, where we can set priorities, and then where are there places, you know, the longer term recommendations, some of which are quite challenging, a number of which we need support from partners to achieve, so we can sort of set a framework that we own as IUCN. And we'll hear shortly from Sean and Kristin, from two commission chairs, you know, to make sure that this review, which was asked for by the Director General and all 6 commission chairs, is something that has a response across the whole of the union and reaches out to IUCN members. You know, you've heard from Ambassador Chowri about the expectations that Council has about showing our work being implemented. So I think, you know, focus now on how the review transitions to the IUCN youth strategy, and the IUCN youth strategy should be the way you can see transparency from IUCN about what we are capable of delivering, what we commit to deliver, and whether we then follow through on the strategy that we set up. There are some exciting new directions. So you just heard from Valérie, and we'll hear shortly from Sean and Kristin about the Commission's element of that. But the youth strategy is the crucial thing to focus on next, and hold us to account. The nudges and kicks, I think that Ambassador Chowri pointed up. You know, we need to be held to account to deliver now as we move forward.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tim. I see a hand up from Oscar. If you have a short question you would like to pose.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is Oscar from Rwanda. I'm really happy with this. I need to thank you, the commitment as well as the organization. But I have some key comments or advice, not just a question, but they look like question as well. So in this, most of us, we are new on this platform, and we are not joining all the meeting as well due to the time, which is right. But I'm thinking maybe there is like a meeting centers where we will get all this information. Like I have seen here there is some information that you are sharing, and all those things, all of us, we are not catching as we are not following all the meeting. So I would suggest to be better if all those information will be mentioned on the sentences which will be made after the meeting. That is my concern. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Oscar, for those comments. I think that's a really important point. We've got many, many resources and tools and pieces of information to share with all the participants, and we'll be sure to include it in a comprehensive newsletter or email out to you through the platform following the event. So thank you for that important reminder. Are there any other hands up? Anyone else who would like to pose a question? No hands up? All right. Well, in that case, we will. Yes, Dominic.
Tim, building on your last comment that you were making about the IUCN youth strategy, could you tell us a little bit more about who is working on that and how it's moving forward? I understand that the Global Youth Summit is collecting some input for that. But the process is one question, and the other is really around budgets. We've run into this challenge in the past. You know, can it be financed? Thank you.
So sure, Hannah, shall I go ahead? So in essence, where we need to get with the IUCN response and the strategy going forward is ownership from a combination of the IUCN DG and the 6 commission chairs. So what we're doing at the moment is firstly, as the review was delivered in February, looking to the Youth Summit as a significant opportunity to ground truth what the review has said. The summit itself is going to generate and is generating a massive amount of energy and ideas and outcomes and sort of views about what IUCN should do. So it would be, it's important for us to hear what the summit says, and we will. And it's also important in that process to design inside IUCN a conversation with IUCN youth leaders. So we need, when we get to the eventual sign off of the IUCN youth strategy, that has to be something which itself is engaged intergenerationally and with youth leadership across IUCN. So right now this is a process which is coming together. We need a number of the senior managers and leads in IUCN to engage. All 6 commission chairs are already engaged, but I'm trying to find connections to a number of parts of IUCN that need to be, in part of this process. So, for instance, questions around career tracks in IUCN need our human resources group to be, engaged in looking at what the solutions and the actions look like, and so that process is coming together. To identify people like that, Valerie, key people that are leading different ways in which we can respond to the review. And I think, just to summarize across that, Dominic, it's clear that the response to the scope of this review needs to have lots of different bits of the union working. The review makes an important point about the strength of IUCN also being working in a decentralized way. So this shouldn't be seen as a kind of global program. It needs to be something that's being acted on through our regional programs, through our regional networks, through country programs as well. And all of that takes a bit of time to get to. So it's why we see an arc between now and the IUCN Congress to get from review, response to the review, and strategy going forward. The detail of that, I guess we'll be a little bit iterative. It'll be a little bit organic at times, but hopefully that gives you a sense of the process that we're engaging in. And I'm sure Kristin and Sean will add a bit to the sense the commission chairs have of that process as well, because we've heard how important the commissions and youth engagement in the commissions are as part of, as a part of a way to respond to the review. you asked a question about budget. Sorry, it's an important thing for me to not forget and not mention. So, you know, we know budget is challenging. We need to do, in my view, we need to do 3 things. One is we need to identify how existing budgets and programs are able to accommodate youth in a more in a clearer and more purposeful way. The second is we need to make a case for additional investments if we can see that that's possible in the short term, and then we need to go fundraising. Nothing IUCN ever does is capable of being funded because we've got a magic pot of money somewhere that's just waiting to be allocated. If we spend money on something in IUCN from our own bank account, we have to take money from something else. So we need to, you know, I think see a world where we've got to build coalitions, partnerships, you know, look out to new relations with not really donors, but partners that can help us resource the work that's needed. And I wouldn't pretend we have a magic budget for everything the review's asking for. You know, this is something we're going to need to build over time, but we need to act now.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you, Dominic, for those questions. I'm conscious of time, and so I would like to move on to a few closing remarks from 2 of our commission chairs who have very kindly joined us for this session as well. So I would like to first introduce the chair of IUCN's Commission on Education and Communication, Sean Southey, for a few remarks. Sean, over to you.
Hi, as we're doing this, I had to just help the other chairs get into their session to talk to young people. We're not always the most technically savvy. So my deepest apologies. I would be remiss if I did not start with a really big thank you to the Intergens team. It's a big team and it's impressive, the results they created and the clear recommendations. But it's even more impressive the number of people they talked to, the input they got, the many people who care enough to take the time, some of them hours and hours, to give their input and guidance to this process. The one thing you keep hearing is that IUCN is a complex animal. It has 1,400 members, 6 commissions, over 7,000 commission members, 1,400 members across 3 different categories of Indigenous peoples, NGOs, government. Then you add to that 1,000 staff in over 30 offices and over 50 national and regional committees. No one can ever understand it all. And it's just frankly impossible. And there can be no single entry point for youth. But this report gives us a roadmap. It gives us an entry point and it asks questions that the institution is open and happy to respond to. And I think in having this formalized process of thinking through the report, thinking through its recommendations, creating a roadmap, creating a concrete strategy, positions us well to take IUCN to a new level of youth engagement. I have been working on this issue probably for 2.5 years in a focused sense, to culminating in the summit, but that's only an input. And the really good news is everyone wants this to happen. I have not heard one person who has said, why youth? We don't want youth. Let's not put youth in the table. We want less youth in the commissions. No, everyone to the highest level of council, the board, the staff, all are welcome and endorsing this. So there are still many hurdles to overcome. You know, we have to get a solid response. We need to consolidate that. All 6 commissions chairs will work together to look at how we can streamline our processes and structures. Tim and Dominique have pointed out the importance of the financial needs that go with some of these big shifts and aspirational changes, and we're committed to working with the Secretariat team to support what is needed in fundraising. But in a complex world, there's only one thing that's fixed. And this is from complexity theory, and that's you as people. Individuals in a complex system is all that is fixed. So all I can encourage you to do is keep being a voice for youth in IUCN and in conservation, because your voice is the center of a network, a hub that is cascading across the union. And it is the biggest and most beautiful environmental organization at scale in the world. And I look forward to looking back at the next World Conservation Congress, the one after Marseille, the one 5 years after the pandemic, and looking at an organization that is more youthful and has truly mainstreamed youth into its institutions, its structures, its financing, its fundraising, and its governance. Good work, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sean. And I'm going to pass now to Kristin Walker, who is the chair of our Commission on Environmental, Economic, and Social Policy. Thank you, Kristin, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks to you all for your participation. Just as Sean said, I want to put a shout out to the Intergens team who put together this report. I think, we are at a crossroads right now, right? We have been all grappling with a pandemic that has impacted our lives in many ways. And we are at a crossroads and looking at how we need to address our own life issues, but also those we're trying to deal in protecting the planet. In terms of CEASE, we are about to embark on a reimagining conservation campaign, and I feel that this intergenerational report is key to that, is how do we look at moving forward on these issues, bringing in a more inclusive approach to conservation writ large, and how we bring in those actors and support that voice. I think, and your voice is here, and I think the 15,000 youth members and intergenerational members who've been participating in this summit over the last almost 2 weeks now, are key to that and need to continue to make noise for that effective change. In terms of pragmatic steps, I think the report outlines that it's not a marathon, it's a journey. And I think by having the short-term steps and the longer-term steps will allow us to move forward. Building a little bit on what Sean and Tim said, there needs to be a response to the review and understanding what that youth strategy will look like. But I think it's multifaceted, right? It's the Secretariat and the commissions, right? And I think you've heard from Sean and I about some of the commissions. Tim and others in the team have talked about the Secretariat. It's really programmatic. How do we look at youth more broadly in conservation and conservation's various facets? But then it's also elevating the work of IUCN members who are working with youth or learning from them. There are many IUCN members who are working directly with the youth on the ground, and that needs to be elevated into a much more global scale and in communications. Again, we've all talked about what is the beast of IUCN. It is a large and complex organization, but part of the value of IUCN is its membership and pulling on those assets that are in the membership to raise the level of these issues. I guarantee you many of us on this call today could probably list 5 or 6 member organizations who are investing in youth, who are helping to bring up that next generation, whether it's under 18 or whether it's young professionals from 18 to 35. And I think we need to harness that as part of the power of this strategy. I think it's really important, and I think all 3 of the working groups did mention about guidelines for engagement with the commissions. I think evaluating how the commissions are each approaching youth engagement. For one reason or another, they're different, right? WCPA has a youth group. Some of the other commissions have do a intergenerational lead and a youth lead as opposed to an elder, because I don't really want to call myself too old yet. And I think really formalizing some of those mentorship programs, at least, and I'll speak on behalf of the commissions rather than on behalf of the Secretariat, is probably an important piece. And then I do think, and we cannot deny, and Tim and Sean and others always know that we really do need to look at the funds around this, right? The one group did talk about the independence of funds. There needs to be an influx of flexible funds to be able to allow this work to begin, right? To begin and to be flexible to organize. Then it can be integrated more broadly. And I think that's the collective work that has to happen moving forward on these issues. And we also need to look at what our members can do. I know there's a lot of focus on the Secretariat, but the Secretariat's also partnered with members where maybe something should be hosted in a member organization in conjunction with the Secretariat. So how do we bring along a series of members who could help put that push into this set of efforts. So I want to echo what Sean said. The most important actors in this are all of us here and making this happen. Ambassador Chowri has been on the IUCN Council. He has been a noisemaker on behalf of youth. And I think we continue to make that noise through all the structures of IUCN. I work on a commission that was a noisemaker, bringing in the issues of people and rights and governance into the conservation paradigm many years ago, but we weren't very well liked early on in the IUCN world, but we need to be provocative and we need to affect change and reimagine conservation. So thanks.
Thank you, Kristin, for those remarks. I think it really resonates well with capturing everything that's been said, but also really reflecting the space that we're occupying in this and where we want to go next, and the challenges that we face in getting there. So thank you for highlighting those and being so clear and honest about it with the group. I think it's really important that everyone recognizes the massive, not only capacity, but also funds that are required just to see all these things come to life as next steps. But it's a great start that we have. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tim for any final reflections and comments.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Well, you've heard a few comments back from me already. I mean, I think just firstly to thank Kristin and thank Sean. And I think my first point is that I think whatever we do to act in this space, it's important we act across the diversity that is IUCN. You know, we need to have a purposeful strategy, but it needs to recognize that we're a very unique, you know, wide-ranging and wide-reaching organization. That's the upside of being complicated is we have lots of ways we can work if we know how to make our energies count. The second is, I think the review leads me to the conclusion that, you know, the strategy needs to see a series of different things happen that cater to the diversity of youth. You know, our program says, you know, it's more than, if you take the IUCN age definition of youth, it's more than half the people on the planet. You know, one size isn't going to fit all, and that's been a huge message of the summit since the opening. So, you know, looking to some different lines of action that we can take, and I think in that context, you know, what's important to me is that we have some priorities, we have some things we can do, and that we're honest about where we need, you know, we have challenges where we're going to have harder things to do that are more important, but that are going to have a blockage. Either it's complicated to achieve, you know, there are political blockages, it's a financial issue. You know, we need to be honest about where we can act and what help we're going to need to move everything forward in this ambitious agenda. And I guess lastly, I think the importance is to get this organized and to have clarity about our intentions and transparency, and the point that I've made earlier about the need for a strategy in IUCN that can be a really significant refresh and an accountable plan of action for our work on youth going forward. With that, Hannah, as my intergenerational team member, I'm going to hand it back to you to close. Maybe you can say all of the thank yous that are necessary, but maybe my last thank you is to the Intergens and all of you that are here, and those of you that are not here, because it was a highly competitive process to appoint somebody to do the IUCN Youth Review. And I think with a lot of work done, with a lot of sort of tough conversations around the reviews that you had back on the draft, that's really, I think, have helped also sort of sharpen up this. We've got a review which really is, I think, incredibly fit for purpose. It gives us energy and clarity about where we need to move forward as IUCN. And I guess this process is a moment to, you know, also thank you for your contributions to get us here. I'm sure we're going to stay engaged in moving this forward, but thanks to you. And Hannah, I hope you'll tell people about the survey as you close this workshop, but I hand it to you to close us out. Thanks very much to everybody. And Hannah, back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Tim. Just a few more thanks. I have already dropped the link to the survey in the chat. I've actually dropped links to 2 surveys in the chat. I will drop them again. One is the survey for co-designing the IUCN Academy led by Valérie, and the other one is the survey on the actual review. And so we've also included the links to where you can find the review documents, so the reports, you can go through them and then fill out the survey. And please do share your honest comments and recommendations building from our discussion today. I think there've been such a great wealth of comments that have come in from all different parts. And just to hear so many different thoughts has been really wonderful. So please do keep them coming. Our idea is to then take all this in and reflect upon it as we then put it all together in a very strong and concrete recommendation report to IUCN moving forward. So thank you all for that. Please do fill out the surveys. They will be living online for some time. So don't hesitate to fill it out when you have a moment or two. I will drop them again in the chat before we end here. A couple more thank yous, of course, to Tim. Thank you for all the organizing and coordinating on the back end. Thank you to Melanie, Douglas, Isa, Grace, Deepu, and your team for joining us today. Thank you. Very special thanks to Kristin and Sean for joining us today and sharing their comments. I know that Ambassador Horia is already off, but we are very grateful for his support and partnership on this from the outset. So thank you all so much. We hope to hear from you again. Please do stay connected. Enjoy the rest of the summit. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. And Roxana has just dropped in the chat the links again to the survey. So thank you all so much for your time. Go enjoy some networking sessions, do some yoga, and hopefully we'll see you on the next workshop soon. Take care,
Hannah.
everyone.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Kristin. Thank you all, Grace, Melanie, Douglas, and all the others. Thank you. See you again.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ambassador
you.
Horia. Thank you. Have a good
Bye-bye.
night.
Yeah,
Bye-bye. Good
Yeah,
night.
this is great. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Anna. Thank
Bye,
you so much
everyone.
for coordinating. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.